In this short video, we'll be introducing the mysterious and sometimes misunderstood world of bats. We'll take a look at how they live and the threats they face, as well as some of their fascinating adaptations. We'll also be giving you some hints and tips for finding signs of bats in your area. We know that mammals, like us, breathe air, have fur or hair, warm-blooded, and we give birth to live young and feed our babies milk, but it's hard to believe that bats are actually mammals too. Look at this bat. You'd be forgiven for thinking it's a bird, as it does fly, but on closer look it certainly has no feathers. And it doesn't lay eggs. Instead, it has skin instead of feathers, and it gives birth to live young. Unbelievably, bats make up a quarter of all mammals. There are 1,100 different species of bat in the world, from fruit bats like flying foxes in Africa and vampire bats in America, to the tiny bumblebee bats about this size in Thailand. Bats are so successful, and this is probably because they can do something that other mammals can't, and that's fly. But more about that later. What's interesting is only 9 species of bat are tough enough to live in Scotland, and they feed entirely on insects. Bats, like all animals, need food and shelter to survive. They can take up shelter in houses, tree holes, and even man-made boxes. It makes sense for them to pick a home with close access to their feeding sites. Some of the most common places to find bats are near water, like these Dubentins. They skim the surface of the water to catch their insects. Or near woodlands, like these long-eared bats that like to hunt near the edges of woodlands. Or the nocturnal bat that also roost and sleep in trees. The nocturnal is the biggest, noisiest and fastest bat in Scotland. Other good places for bats to live are in bridges or cracks in walls. These soprano pipistrelle bats are the ones we most often find sharing loft spaces in houses and hunting in our gardens. In this house, there's a summer maternity roost. It's only females here, no boys allowed. The males find an alternative bachelor pad whilst the females raise their young. This is a winter hibernating site that we have put up in our woodlands to help protect bats and help them find the perfect cool conditions to spend the winter. But they can also choose caves and tree holes too that are a little bit more natural. The German name for a bat is Fledermaus, which means flittermouse. So, is a bat just a flying mouse? You might be surprised to find out that bats can live till about 25 years old. Not like a mouse, which is only about 2 or 3 years. Their long lives are a result of the fact that they hibernate or sleep through the winter. Bats have filled their own specific niche in nature by being able to fly at night. They have the perfect design for this, with light bones to help them fly. We can take a closer look at the wing. I have a little dead bat here that we found. It's a pipistrelle. It looks like it has a hole in its wing, which might tell us why it's died. Maybe couldn't catch insects, but it allows us to see just how tiny they are, and it only weighs the same as a 20p piece. Bats are so unique that scientists have placed them in a group all to themselves. The Chiroptera, which means hand wing. They are more related to us than you would imagine. Look at the shoulder here, going down to the elbow and the wrist, and finally you see a little thumb and the finger bones, which have all adapted into a wing. They are expert flyers. Nocturnal bats can reach speeds of up to 30 miles an hour. Different species also adopt different ways of flying too. like the Debentons skimming the water, or the horseshoe bats flying up and down lines, going up the corridors, or looking at the erratic figure of 8 of the pipistrelle when they're looking for their midges. Bats are nocturnal night dwellers, so how do they even see in the dark? I'm sure you've heard of people saying blind as a bat, but bats aren't actually blind. But they do need some special adaptations to help them navigate and find their prey. They have huge appetites and need to catch 3,000 midges each a night, so they need a sophisticated system to help them avoid crashing into branches or even spider webs in the dark. All Scottish bats use a special sonar called echolocation to navigate whilst flying. They shout and listen for echoes, and it helps build up a map of their surroundings. So when the bat's flying through the air, it emits these ultrasonic squeaks, probably about 12 to 15 in a second, and these high-pitched sounds can't normally be heard by us. Some children can pick them up. The bat detector helps us hear them. Each bat seems to have its own distinctive identifying song. The pip has a slappy sound, like the Debenton sounds like marbles in a tin. Listen out for the slappy sounds of the pipistrelle bats and those feeding buzzes when it catches a midgie. And funnily enough, the brown long-eared bat is sometimes called the whispering bat because we don't pick them up too much on the detectors. They need to be quite quiet to hunt for moths, so they don't tend to be so loud. The noctule shouts 4 times louder than the legal limit of a nightclub, so it's a loud one, that. Don't worry if you don't have a bat detector. The best places to watch bats are places with insects. And remember, you can also identify bats in flight with their unique patterns. If you suspect you've found a roost, you might see tiny, crumbly droppings stuck to walls or even windowsills or just at the bottom of entrances. These look like mouse droppings, but they're made up of tiny insects, which means they'll crumble to a powder between your fingers. Bats have suffered a major decline over the years, and it's essential that we can help conserve them. Bats can be predated naturally by owls, but their biggest predator is a domestic cat. It's a good idea, therefore, to keep any cats in at night where possible. The biggest threat to bats is unfortunately man, and the impact we have on the places they live and eat. Habitat loss results in many feeding sites being destroyed or roosts being dramatically reduced and isolated. Farming practices that interfere with the insect populations can also have a devastating effect. Even the toxic timbers found in houses have had a huge impact. Thankfully, these toxic chemicals are now banned, and we are moving forward. All bat species found in Scotland are classed as European protected species, and under law, bats and their roosts receive full protection. You can help conserve bats too by minimising any disturbance to known bat sites. You can also increase potential roost sites by planting trees or putting up bat boxes in your garden. You could think about attracting more insects and plants to your garden, which will be perfect for the bats to feast on. By taking part in national monitoring programmes or sharing bat sightings with conservation trusts like the Bat Conservation Trust, you'll be able to help protect bats in the future too.